8 years ago, Sarah Chen stopped an assassination attempt. In a Middle Eastern country, on a hotel rooftop, wind speed 28 miles per hour, and the target 800 meters away, her team's intelligence had been wrong. The threat wasn't coming from the ground like they'd thought. It was coming from the roof. Sarah had 3.2 seconds to make her decision: reposition, recalculate, fire. 1 diplomat and 200 civilians stayed alive. Sarah received a medal. And nobody ever knew she existed. Now, today, Sarah Chen stood in the parking lot of Oakwood Elementary School. She held Emma's forgotten lunchbox in one hand, mud on her sneakers, hair in a messy ponytail. The other mothers changed direction when they saw her coming. Too poor, too tired, too different. "Poor Emma," Jennifer Ashford whispered to her friend. "What kind of future can she have with a mother like that?" Sarah heard the whisper. She heard everything. Years of training to intercept enemy communications had given her that skill. But she said nothing. Because these people weren't threats, they were just disconnected, separated from the real world. They'd never learned what survival actually meant. Sarah hoped they'd never have to learn. But life doesn't always go according to plan. And very soon, everyone at Oakwood Elementary would learn what survival really meant. And they'd discover that Sarah Chen was so much more than poor Emma's mother. I wonder where you're watching this story unfold from today. Maybe in a suburban neighborhood near your own children's school. Maybe in New York, Los Angeles, or a small town somewhere in between. Wherever you are, you've probably seen a mother underestimated before, but rarely does that misjudgment lead to consequences quite like this. Sarah's past. Sarah Chen's story began in 2007. She was only 22 years old and had just joined the U.S. Army. Like most young people, her reasons for enlisting were simple: college costs and a vague sense of direction. During basic training, her instructors noticed something: Sarah Chen wasn't just strong or fast. She had a kind of cold focus underneath the calm. She became clearer in chaos. "Chen," Sergeant Morrison said to her one day, "you ever think about trying out for Special Forces?" Sarah was surprised. "Me? You're not just anything, and you know it." Special Forces selection was the hardest military training. There was hundreds of candidates applied. Only a handful made it through. And for women? It was nearly impossible, but Sarah made it. The next 3 years were the toughest of her life: precision marksmanship training, close quarters combat techniques, intelligence gathering, language skills, quick thinking, and even quicker action. By 26, Sarah Chen's official title was Protection Specialist. Unofficially, she was a ghost operative, trained to protect the world's most important people. Her assignments took her to countries she was never supposed to mention, missions that could never be explained, and every single time, the only thing that brought her home alive was her training and her instincts. Then, Emma came along. Emma. In 2016, one of Sarah's team members, a translator named Daniel Park, was killed during an operation. A bombing. Fast and brutal. Daniel had a daughter, Emma, only 3 years old, and her mother had left years before. In Daniel's will, there was only one name: Sarah Chen. "If something happens to me," Daniel had told her once, "will you take care of Emma? You're the only person I trust." Sarah was 30 years old at the time. She had no plans for children. She wasn't married, wasn't even engaged. Her life was classified operations, sleepless nights, and constant movement. But Daniel had asked her. And Sarah Chen never broke a promise. She adopted Emma. The first 6 months were a disaster. A 3-year-old child, traumatized, missing her father, not understanding why she was living with this stranger woman, and Sarah knowing absolutely nothing about childcare. But Sarah Chen had been trained to learn. So she learned. Gradually, Emma started to open up, started running to Sarah's arms, started calling her mom, and Sarah's heart trained for so many years to stay cold and professional, began to melt the decision. In 2017, Sarah Chen faced an impossible choice. A new assignment, high-risk protection detail, 6 months in the Middle East, a major promotion opportunity. It could solidify her entire career, but taking Emma along wasn't possible. Too dangerous. One night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah looked at her military file, 10 years of service. Perfect evaluations, 2 Bronze Stars, countless successes in classified operations. Then, she walked into Emma's room. The little girl was curled up with her teddy bear, Buttons, sleeping peacefully. In her sleep, she murmured, "Mama, stay, don't go." Sarah made a decision that night. The next day, she walked into her commander's office and submitted her resignation. "Chen, are you sure?" Colonel Morrison was shocked. "Your career is at its peak. You can't take this back." "I know, sir." "Why?" Sarah looked at the photo of Emma on her phone. "Because some missions are more important than others." By the end of 2017, Sarah Chen was officially retired, removed from all official records. All her classified access revoked. She became invisible. But this time, by her own choice. Civilian life. The transition to civilian life was harder than Sarah expected. Special Forces wasn't exactly resume material. Writing 2008 to 2017, classified government work on job applications didn't help much. Employers wanted details, Sarah couldn't provide them. Money was also a problem. Military pay had been good, but life was expensive. Especially with Emma, daycare, food, clothes, toys. Sarah took 3 jobs at once, mornings at a coffee shop, lunch shift at a restaurant, evenings cleaning office buildings. It was exhausting, humiliating, and so different. She'd once protected world leaders. Now she was mopping floors, but Emma was happy. That's what mattered. Oakwood Elementary. When Emma turned 7, Sarah enrolled her at Oakwood Elementary, a nice school, safe neighborhood. Everything Emma needed for a good childhood. But Sarah quickly realized something. She didn't exactly fit in with the other school parents. They were wealthy families. Dual income, big houses, new cars. The mothers went to yoga classes, organized PTA meetings, posted perfect homemade meals on Instagram. Sarah? She came exhausted from 3 jobs, hair messy, clothes worn out. She was late to her first PTA meeting. Her coffee shop shift had run over. When she rushed in, all the other mothers were already seated, coffees beside them, notebooks ready. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said breathlessly. "Traffic?" "No problem," said the woman running the meeting, Jennifer Ashford, but her tone suggested it was a problem. "Now where were we?" "Oh yes, the Spring Gala Volunteer Committee." Sarah sat in the corner, feeling invisible. The other mothers didn't know her. Nobody chatted with her. She was an outsider. After the meeting, Jennifer approached her with her perfect smile. "You're Emma's mom, right?" Sarah. "Yes, nice to meet you. Emma's such a sweet girl. A little quiet, but sweet. Can you make it to the parent-teacher conference? Thursday afternoon at 2. Sarah's mind calculated quickly. Thursday afternoon at 2, she was on her restaurant shift. Switching was nearly impossible. "I'm afraid I'm working then?" Jennifer's smile faded slightly. "Oh, I see. Maybe we can arrange another time. I understand how busy it is for working mothers." Working mothers! The phrase hung in the air, slightly dismissive. Sarah said nothing. What could she say? "Actually, I used to protect foreign dignitaries, but now I work 3 jobs because my military service means nothing on civilian applications." No. Sarah just smiled and nodded. Stayed invisible. But being invisible didn't bother her. She'd spent her life training to be invisible. The dismissal. As months passed, the division became more obvious. The other mothers organized private playdates, Sarah wasn't invited. At school volunteer events, Sarah got the least prestigious tasks: trash pickup, parking lot duty. Once, Sarah offered to volunteer for Emma's class. "Maybe I could teach the kids some basic self-defense." The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, tensed up. "Oh, thanks, Sarah, but I think that might be a bit much for this age group. Maybe something else? Making copies?" Sarah accepted the copying job. Another time, in the schoolyard, Sarah tried joining the other mothers' conversation. "And then we went to Provence. It was amazing." "I've never seen that part of Europe," Sarah said genuinely. "Always been more Middle East and—" "Oh, did you work there?" Jennifer asked, but wasn't really interested. "Sort of, yeah. Government work." "How interesting," Jennifer interrupted, clearly uninterested. "Anyway, like I was saying, the hotel was incredible." The conversation continued without Sarah. She stepped back, invisible again. Emma noticed, one evening when they got home, the little girl was quiet. "Emma, sweetie, what's wrong?" Sarah asked. "The kids at school are laughing at us." Sarah's heart clenched. "Why?" "Because they say you're not a normal mom. Madison's mom told her we're poor, and Tyler said you're weird." Sarah pulled Emma into her lap. "Honey, sometimes people criticize what they're afraid to understand. Us not being like them doesn't mean we're wrong, just different." "But aren't you a normal mom?" Sarah smiled, though her heart ached. "Maybe I'm not. But I love you more than any normal mom could." "Is that enough?" Emma nodded, hugging Sarah's neck. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah went to the back of her bedroom closet. She opened the hidden compartment. Inside were her old uniform, her medals, and a locked box. She opened the box. Inside were photos. Photos of her team, mission photos. Daniel Park, Emma's father. Sarah looked at the photos for a long time, another life, another Sarah. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered. "I wanted to give Emma a better life, but I don't know." She put the photos back, locked the box, closed the closet. But in the back of her mind, that old voice, Colonel Morrison's voice, still whispered, "Chen, always be ready, you never know." The threat. What Sarah didn't know was that right at that moment, 200 miles away, someone else was making plans. His name was Marcus Reeves, 35 years old, an angry man who believed his life was a disaster. He'd been fired from his job. His wife had left him. He'd lost custody of his kids. And in his mind, the system was to blame for all of it. The school system, the social system, the entire system that privileged those more successful than him. Marcus had been planning for months, researching, preparing. His target, Oakwood Elementary, the school of the wealthy, privileged families, the kind of school his own children had gone to, but that Marcus could never afford. Marcus had purchased weapons illegally, memorized the layout, identified timing and entry points, and he chose a date, April 15th, Thursday, spring concert day. Parents would be at school, maximum impact. No security detail picked this up. No threat assessment was made. Oakwood Elementary was a small, safe neighborhood school. These things didn't happen here, but they would. The day, April 15th, Thursday, was sunny and beautiful. Sarah finished her morning shift at the coffee shop, skipped her lunch shift, she wasn't going to miss Emma's concert, and arrived at school at 2 p.m. The parking lot was full. Sarah finally parked in the farthest spot. A few mothers gave her odd looks, as if she wasn't parking in an appropriate place. When she went inside, the hallways were filled with parents and children, excitement, noise, a normal school event. Sarah automatically noted the exits, windows, fire doors, security cameras, very few, security personnel, just one elderly janitor unarmed. Old habits never die. The concert was beautiful. Emma played violin, not expertly, But she tried so hard, and Sarah's heart swelled with pride. The concert ended at 2:45 p.m. Families started leaving the auditorium. Sarah was waiting for Emma. The little girl was backstage putting her violin in its case. At exactly 2:52 p.m., Sarah heard something. Most people didn't hear it, because most people didn't know the difference between a gunshot and a car backfire. But Sarah knew. Semi-automatic weapon, 9mm, distance approximately 50 meters, coming from the school's main hallway. Sarah's training kicked in. Automatic, instant, Emma, find her, protect her, survive. The crisis time slowed in Sarah's mind. It always happened like this in operations, a combination of adrenaline, training, and pure instinct. She looked around. Parents were still chatting, smiling. They hadn't noticed. The second shot came, then the third. Now people were starting to notice. Heads turned. Some people asked questions. Was that a car? Then the screaming started from the hallway. Gun! There's a gun! Panic exploded instantly. Parents started running in all directions, screaming. Children crying. Pure chaos. Sarah's training took over. Colonel Morrison's voice echoed in her head. Panic kills! Stay calm! Execute the plan! Sarah ran to the auditorium. Emma was still backstage with the other kids, eyes wide with fear. Emma! Sarah called out. Emma ran to her, and Sarah held her tight. Mom, what's happening? Shh, honey, everything's going to be okay, but I need you to do exactly what I say, okay? Emma nodded, tears filling her eyes. Sarah looked around. Backstage, there were about 15 kids and only 3 adults. Sarah, Mrs. Patterson, the teacher frozen with panic, and another parent, Richard Coleman, Jennifer's husband, trying to call 911 on his phone. Richard, Sarah said in a sharp, authoritative voice, lock that door, now. Richard looked at her in confusion. What? Who are you? Lock that door! Sarah's voice was commanding, non-negotiable. Richard obeyed, locking the door. Sarah turned to Mrs. Patterson. Get the children behind the stage, behind the curtains. Quietly, move. But the police. Police are at least 8 minutes away. Until then, we're on our own. Move now. Mrs. Patterson started gathering the children. Sarah looked around. Exit routes, defensive positions, potential weapons. There was a metal pole backstage, support for the stage lights. Sarah wrenched it free. Primitive, but effective. Richard was staring at her. My God, what are you doing? Whatever it takes to survive, Sarah said quietly. More gunshots in the hallway, more screaming. The shooter was getting closer. Sarah stood near the door holding the metal pole. Her stance low, balanced combat position. Richard whispered, Were you in the military? Sarah's eyes locked on the door. Once upon a time. The confrontation. When Marcus Reeves reached the auditorium door, he had shot 23 people in the school. 6 were dead, 11 were critically wounded, the rest had escaped or were hiding. The school was a nightmare scene. Blood, screaming, broken glass. Marcus's mind had long since disconnected from reality. Only anger, pain, and a twisted sense of revenge remained. He tried the auditorium door. Locked. He could hear sounds from inside, children crying, whispers. Marcus pounded on the door. Open the door! Inside, Sarah waited in position. The children were behind the stage, hiding silently. Richard stood trembling against the wall. I'm not opening it, Sarah said calmly. Marcus fired at the door. The bullet shattered the lock mechanism. The door swung slightly open. This was it. The critical moment. Marcus pushed the door and entered, raising his weapon. Kirsten moved. 8 years had passed, but her body remembered. Muscle memory, training, instinct. Sarah swung the metal pole with perfect timing, hitting Marcus's wrist. The gun flew from his hand, clattering to the floor. Marcus screamed in pain, but he was quick. He spun toward Sarah, trying to punch her. Sarah blocked, redirected, and struck the back of Marcus's leg. He stumbled. Close quarters combat, Sarah's specialty, was fast and brutal. Marcus tried to choke her. Sarah broke his arm. Marcus tried to kick Sarah, collapsed his knee. In 5 seconds, Marcus was on the ground motionless, Sarah's knees on his back, his arms locked behind him. "Don't move," Sarah said quietly, her voice cold and professional. "If you move, I'll break your arm. Understand?" Marcus groaned but nodded. Sarah looked at Richard, still in shock, against the wall. "Richard, get the gun. Bring it to me. Careful, hold it without touching the trigger." Richard obeyed shakily, handing the gun to Sarah. Sarah checked the weapon, secured it, emptied the magazine, and tossed it aside. "Now," Sarah said, "go outside and tell the police to come here. The shooter is secured." Richard ran out. Sarah maintained her hold on Marcus, waiting. The children were still hiding behind the stage. Emma peeked her head out. "Mom?" "I'm here, honey. It's over. You're safe." The aftermath police arrived 4 minutes later, faster than Sarah's estimate, but Marcus was already neutralized. It was chaos everywhere, wounded people wrapped in bandages, panicked parents, traumatized children, ambulances, media, FBI. Sarah was taken for questioning, standard procedure. But her story was quickly verified, neutralized the shooter, protected the children, probably saved dozens of lives. The next day, Sarah's story hit national news. Hero mom stops school shooting. Former Special Forces operative neutralizes gunman. Reporters swarmed her, questions were asked. Photos were taken. Sarah refused them all. "I was just protecting children. Any other parent would have done the same." But that wasn't true. Any other parent couldn't have, because any other parent wasn't Sarah Chen. In the days following the incident, Sarah's phone rang constantly. Media, old military friends, even Colonel Morrison, now retired, called. "Chen, I'm proud of you. Always knew you had it in you. Ever think about coming back? Private security firms would work for you. Good money, better life for Emma." Sarah hesitated. Good money, stability, doing what she was trained to do. But then she looked at Emma, curled up on the couch, still in shock, but safe home, with her mother. "No, sir. My place is here." The transformation. Oakwood Elementary was never the same again. Survivors received trauma counseling. The school completely overhauled its security protocols, and the community, especially those perfect mothers, began some serious soul-searching. Jennifer Ashford came to Sarah's door 3 days after the incident. Her eyes were red, worn from crying. "Sarah, I don't know what to say." Sarah opened the door. "Come in, Jennifer." They sat at the kitchen table. Sarah made tea. Jennifer wrapped her hands around the cup, searching for words. "All this time," Jennifer finally said, "I dismissed you. Thought you were poor, insignificant, didn't know your place. And you saved my husband's life. You saved those children, including my daughter who was in the audience." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She let Jennifer process. "I judged you," Jennifer continued, tears streaming down her face. "I made assumptions based on your clothes, your job, I'm so ashamed. You're a hero. And I treated you like you were nothing." Sarah reached across the table, touching Jennifer's hand. "You're not a bad person, Jennifer. You just lived in a bubble. A lot of people do. They've never had to face real danger, real loss, real survival. That doesn't make them bad. Just sheltered." "But I was so cruel." "You were thoughtless. That's different. And you're here now trying to make it right. That takes courage too." Jennifer looked up, searching Sarah's face. "How can you be so kind after everything?" Sarah smiled sadly. "Because I've seen real evil, Jennifer. In war zones, in conflict areas, in places where people hurt each other for no reason at all. What you did? That was just ignorance. And ignorance can be fixed. The community shift. In the weeks that followed, Oakwood Elementary transformed. The PTA restructured its leadership. Jennifer resigned as president and recommended Sarah take her place. Sarah declined. She still had 3 jobs, but she did join the safety committee. The school implemented new security measures, trained security officers, better communication systems, active shooter drills that actually made sense. But more than that, the community itself changed. The mothers who'd once whispered about Sarah now approached her differently, some with genuine apologies, others with curiosity about her past. A few even became real friends. One afternoon, at a parent coffee event Sarah actually had time to attend, a mother named Lisa Martinez sat next to her. "I wanted to thank you," Lisa said quietly, "not just for what you did during the shooting, but for showing us that we don't know people's stories. I've been working 3 jobs too, trying to hide it from the other parents because I was ashamed. Seeing how they treated you made me realize how toxic this environment was." Sarah looked at Lisa, really looked at her tired eyes, worn clothes, quiet dignity. "You're doing great," Sarah said. "Your kids are lucky to have a mother who works so hard for them." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "Nobody's ever said that to me before." "Well, they should have." The national conversation. Sarah's story sparked something bigger than Oakwood Elementary. News outlets across the country picked up the story. Not just as a hero mom stops shooter piece, but as a larger conversation about military veterans transitioning to civilian life, about single mothers struggling to make ends meet, about communities that judge people by appearances rather than character. Sarah was invited to speak at veterans organizations, women's groups, and education conferences. She accepted a few, always uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding that her platform could help others. At one conference, a young veteran approached her after her speech. He was maybe 25, recently discharged, struggling to find work. "Ma'am, how did you handle it? The transition, the judgment? I feel like nobody values what we did." Sarah remembered that feeling, the frustration, the invisibility. "You handle it one day at a time," she told him. "You remember that your service meant something, even if civilians don't always understand it, and you find new ways to serve, new missions. For me, it was raising Emma. For you, it might be something completely different, but you'll find it. What if I can't? Then you reach out. You connect with other veterans. You don't suffer alone. Promise me that." The young man nodded, and Sarah saw some of the tension leave his shoulders. The unexpected recognition. 6 months after the shooting, Sarah received a letter on official Department of Defense letterhead. Inside was an invitation to the Pentagon. No explanation, just a date and time. Sarah was nervous. Had she violated some security protocol by doing media interviews? Was she in trouble? She traveled to Washington, D.C., leaving Emma with her new friend Lisa. At the Pentagon, she was escorted through a maze of corridors to a small conference room. Inside were 3 generals and Colonel Morrison, her old commanding officer. "Chen," Morrison said, standing. "Thank you for coming." "Sir, am I in trouble?" One of the generals, a woman Sarah didn't recognize, smiled. "Far from it, Specialist Chen. We asked you here to offer you something." They explained, the military wanted to create a new program training Special Forces personnel in civilian transition, teaching them how to apply their skills in non-combat situations, helping them find purpose after service, and they wanted Sarah to help design it. "You represent something important," the female general said, "the ability to adapt, to find new missions, to serve in different ways. We've had too many veterans struggle with transition. Too many end up homeless, unemployed, lost. Your story shows there's another path." Sarah listened, thinking about the young veteran from the conference, about all the others like him. I'm not a trainer, Sarah said. I'm not even technically military anymore. You're exactly what we need, Colonel Morrison said. Someone who's lived both sides, who understands the struggle, who can bridge that gap. Sarah thought about Emma, her 3 jobs, her hard-won stability. But she also thought about all the veterans who didn't have what she had, a mission, a purpose, someone to fight for. Can I do it part-time? Sarah asked. I have a daughter. I can't travel extensively. We can make that work, the general said. Sarah took a deep breath. Then, I'm in. Full circle. 1 year after the shooting, Oakwood Elementary held a memorial ceremony. 7 people had died that day. 23 had been wounded. The scars, physical and emotional, would never fully heal. But the community had changed, grown, learned. Sarah stood at the back of the ceremony, uncomfortable with attention. As always, Emma held her hand, now 8 years old, stronger, but still sometimes waking with nightmares. Mom, Emma whispered, why are all those people staring at us? Sarah looked around. It was true. Many attendees kept glancing their way. Because they remember what happened, honey. Do you wish they'd forget? Sarah thought about that part of her did wish for anonymity again, for invisibility. But another part, the part that had spent a year helping veterans transition, advocating for better school security, showing the world that single working mothers were warriors in their own right, that part understood the value of being seen. No, Sarah said. I wish they'd learned without having to go through something so terrible, but since they did, I'm glad they're paying attention now. After the ceremony, Jennifer Ashford approached with her husband Richard and their daughter Madison. Sarah, we wanted to give you something, Jennifer said, handing her an envelope. Inside was a check, a very large check. What is this? The PTA raised money, Richard explained. For you, to help with everything, your jobs, Emma's future, whatever you need. Sarah stared at the check. It was more money than she'd make in 2 years of her 3 jobs combined. I can't accept this. You can, Jennifer said firmly. You saved lives. You changed this community. Let us help you for once. Sarah looked at Emma, then at the check, then at the faces around her, no longer dismissive, no longer judging, but genuinely caring. On one condition, Sarah said. Half of this goes to a fund for military veterans transitioning to civilian life. The other half can go toward Emma's education. Jennifer smiled. Deal. The legacy. 3 years after the shooting, Sarah Chen's life looked very different. She still lived in her modest apartment. She'd had offers to move, but Emma loved her school and her friends now, and stability mattered more than luxury. She still worked, but now as a full-time consultant for the Department of Defense's Veteran Transition Program. The work was meaningful, helping others find their path like she'd found hers. Emma was thriving. Her therapist said she was processing the trauma well. She'd made friends, real friends, including Madison Ashford, who'd become her best friend. And Sarah had found something she'd never expected, community, real community, built not on superficial judgments, but on shared experience and mutual respect. At Oakwood Elementary's PTA meeting, yes, Sarah now attended regularly, she sat next to Lisa Martinez, who'd become her closest friend. Did you ever imagine this? Lisa asked, gesturing at the room full of parents who now treated them with genuine warmth. Never, Sarah admitted. I spent so long being invisible that I forgot what it felt like to be seen. And now? Sarah thought about that. Now I realize both have value. Sometimes being invisible keeps you safe. Sometimes being seen lets you make a difference. The trick is knowing when to be which. A new mother approached, young, nervous, clearly not fitting the Oakwood profile of wealth and privilege. Excuse me, are you Sarah Chen? The woman asked shyly. I am. I just moved here single mom, working 2 jobs, feeling really out of place. Someone told me you might understand. Sarah smiled and pulled out a chair. Sit down. Let me tell you a story about being underestimated and why that's not always a bad thing. Epilogue. 5 years after the shooting, a documentary filmmaker named Rachel Kim was interviewing Sarah for a piece on veteran transitions. What do you want people to learn from your story? Rachel asked. Sarah thought carefully. I want them to learn that you never know someone's story by looking at them. The tired mom in worn-out clothes might be a war hero. The quiet person in the corner might be the strongest person in the room, and underestimating people says more about you than about them. Do you regret leaving the military? Never, because I found a different mission. Raising Emma, helping other veterans, showing communities that service takes many forms. That's just as important as what I did in uniform. What about the shooting? Any PTSD? Nightmares? Sarah was honest. Some. Therapy helps, but mostly I remember that I was exactly where I needed to be that day. My training, my experience, my skills, they weren't wasted. They were preparing me for the moment that mattered most. Protecting your daughter. Protecting all the daughters, all the children. That's every parent's real mission, right? Keep them safe. Give them a future. Show them that kindness and strength aren't opposites. The documentary ended with footage of Sarah at Emma's 5th grade graduation. Emma, now 12, was giving a speech about courage. My mom taught me that courage isn't about being fearless, Emma said, reading from her prepared notes. It's about being scared, but doing what needs to be done anyway. She taught me that people will judge you, but their opinions don't define you. And she taught me that real strength is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just shows up when it matters. Emma looked directly at Sarah in the audience. My mom is the strongest person I know, not because of what she did one scary day at school, but because every single day she shows up. She works hard. She takes care of me. She helps other people. That's real heroism. The audience applauded. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. After the ceremony, Emma ran to her. Did I do okay? You did perfect, honey. You're not embarrassed that I talked about you? Sarah hugged her daughter tight. I'm proud of you, of us, of everything we've built together. As they walked to the car, a newer model now, but still modest, Emma asked, Mom, do you ever miss it? The military? The action? Sarah looked at her daughter at the school behind them, at the life they'd built from scratch. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember that this, right here, right now with you, this is the mission I was always meant for, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The message. If you're watching this story from wherever you are in the world, maybe you're a veteran struggling to transition. Maybe you're a single parent working multiple jobs, feeling invisible and underestimated. Maybe you're someone who's judged others without knowing their story. Here's what Sarah's story teaches us. First, everyone has a past you know nothing about. The person serving your coffee might have saved lives. The quiet neighbor might have extraordinary skills. Don't judge people by their current circumstances. You have no idea what journey brought them there. Second, strength comes in many forms. Sarah was strong in combat, but she was also strong in choosing to leave that life for her daughter. She was strong in working 3 minimum wage jobs without complaint. She was strong in facing judgment without bitterness. That's real strength. Third, communities thrive when they stop judging and start supporting. Oakwood Elementary became better, safer, kinder, more connected, because they learned to see people as they really were, not as they appeared to be. And finally, for the veterans watching, your service isn't over just because you took off the uniform. You have skills, experience, and perspectives that civilians need. Finding how to apply them in civilian life is your new mission. And it's just as important as anything you did in uniform. Sarah Chen spent years being invisible, being dismissed, being underestimated. And then, in one crucial moment, all of that training, All of that experience, all of that quiet strength saved lives. Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones nobody's paying attention to. Sometimes the hero looks like an ordinary mom in worn-out jeans. And sometimes, just sometimes, underestimating someone is the biggest mistake you'll ever make. Where are you watching from today? Have you ever been underestimated? Have you underestimated someone else and learned the truth later? Share your story in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Because at Chronicles of the Unseen, we believe everyone has a story worth seeing. Remember, the quiet person next to you might be the strongest person you'll ever meet. You just have to learn to see them.